How's it, guys? This is Dayvy FC and welcome back to the Euro 2020 fantasy video. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at my team selection going into game week 1 of the Euro 2020. If you guys do recall, we are a couple of days away. I think it's about 2 days as of recording this video that we will be kicking off the Euro 2020 competition when Turkey take on the likes of Italy. So just keep that in your guys' diary for Friday evening to make sure that your team is settled. But in this video, I'm first going to talk to you guys about some talking points such as chip strategy, as well as deadlines, when the deadlines are for each specific game week and each specific match day. And then we're going to go on to my actual team selection in two kind of parts. The first part, we're going to be looking at the fixtures purely and just seeing what my strongest 11 inverted commas is going to be going into game week 1. And then obviously I'm going to be looking at those substitutes and captaincy rotations, and we're going to be looking at my team selection in terms of the dates of the fixture, because please remember, in Euro 2020 you guys can change your captain and also do substitutions between the match days of a single game week. So quite an interesting kind of a concept there. If you guys have played the FIFA fantasy, the UEFA Champions League fantasy, you guys will be familiar with this concept. But if you have come from FPL, we generally stick our teams at the start of the deadline and then we don't touch them till the end of the game week. So just keep that in your guys' kind of minds if you are going to be taking a Euro fantasy quite seriously. Maybe put a reminder on your phone or just in your diary about every single match day and every single deadline, what the time is, so that you won't miss any deadlines. And I would highly recommend you guys to take advantage of this kind of manual substitutions and manual captaincy changes, because obviously with more captains there's a higher chance of getting some points. And I think that if you do use manual substitutes and also a captaincy changes, you will get a lot more points than you would have if you just set and forget your team at the start of the game week. But that's enough said, let's get right into this video. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be going over some talking points, and the first one's going to be the deadlines. So the thing about the Euro fantasy is that they actually make the deadline when the fixture kicks off, and this kind of progresses throughout the game week. So each single match day, for the first fixture of that match day, that's when the end of the captaincy rotation and your manual substitutes can be done. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to give you guys an example here. So for game week 1 on Friday, for my local South African time, Italy take on Turkey at 9 p.m. So the deadline is at 9 p.m. on Friday, and that's going to be for your transfers. But then on Saturday, the kickoff, I think it might be Wales, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. They kick off the first game on Saturday at 3 p.m. South African time. So what's the deadline for Saturday's rotation of substitutes and captaincy? It's going to be 3 p.m. And the thing about this, and why I wanted to bring this up, is that we will be having team sheets before we make those subs and those captaincy changes. It's such an advantage to do this because we're not only going to know which players start, but we can also see the lineups of the opposition team, which might make it a little bit sweeter to maybe captain a player. For example, maybe we look and we want to captain an Italian player, and we look and the whole Turkish backline is tested positive and they're not even going to be featuring, and then we're going to suddenly think, okay, this is going to be a definite captaincy change for us if we do want to go for it. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But I want to just mention that the deadlines are at the kickoff, so you guys will have team news. Don't worry about the Italian lineup, we'll be talking about later if you guys should be going for Immobile or Chiesa or a player like that, but we will know exactly what the Italians are going to be doing with their starting 11. So don't stress about your team too much. And what I would kind of do to prepare for that is set up different combinations. Maybe you want 3 Italian players in the one if they're all going to start, or maybe you want 2 or rotate those 2 or whatever you do. But just be prepared that we will be having some lineups, so that's going to make your guys' decisions a little bit easier or harder depending on how you look at it. But now let's go on and look at my team selection for game week 1. So here we go. This is going to be based on the fixtures. So yes, I know that we can make substitutions. I'll be talking about that in the next talking point, but this is going to be my inverted commas strongest starting 11 that I'm kind of predicting that I'll be having at the end of the game week after I do all those substitutions. So starting off, I've also gone for a strong front 3 there with Cristiano Ronaldo, Romelu Lukaku, and then also Memphis Depay. So I know that's a lot of money up in the front department, but the thing about the forwards and this Euro 2020 fantasy is that that I think they're going to be absolute value for money because they're just going to score so many goals. Now, watch the Euro 2020 be one of the lowest scoring competitions ever just because I said that, but I do think Cristiano Ronaldo against a Hungary side that are going to be quite poor in my opinion. I think that Ronaldo's going to have an absolute field day there, and I can see maybe even a hat-trick being scored for the Portuguese striker. So that's why I think Ronaldo, or at least some coverage of that Portuguese side, is going to be quite valuable for you. Obviously, you don't need it, but I think that it's going to be quite a good profitable situation that they are playing Hungary, one of the worst teams in Euro 2020, unfortunately. Apologies if you are Hungarian. I'm not tuning your national side, but I think you'd agree that compared to Portugal, they probably are going to lose. So I think Ronaldo is going to be a good captaincy option on that last match day. That's kind of the only thing about the Portuguese strikers is that Diogo Jota, Ronaldo, they play on the last match day of Game Week 1. So you're probably going to have a captaincy return by then. I mean, I highly doubt that Insigne, Lukaku, Memphis Depay, they're all going to blank. So the thing you got to kind of think about is that do you actually need a Portuguese captain? And the answer is probably going to be no, but I think that still his points are going to be quite valuable. And although he is quite expensive, I think that Portugal should do quite well. Then the next two are kind of no-brainers. I see Lukaku and Depay in basically everyone's draft. They seem to be super template, and I can understand why. I mean, Romelu Lukaku, basically a no-brainer. With Kevin De Bruyne out injured, we don't really know if he's going to be injured for Russia, but he might actually be back. But I think in terms of that Belgium side, definitely the best option to go for besides De Bruyne. So I think he's got a good shout of that golden boot in the Euro 2020 competition, and I think that that's why he's going to be in my squad. Then also Memphis Depay. So if you guys did watch my first draft, I've replaced Immobile with Depay just because I think that Depay could have maybe a little bit more upside against the Ukraine side that I'm expecting Netherlands to beat. And also I saw in the midweek that Depay was on penalties, so that's also a nice advantage there for the striker from Netherlands. Then going into the midfield department, we have Insigne and Berardi, or should I say Berardi. So hopefully my Italian pronunciation of that name is going to be quite good, but apologies if I am butchering it. But I think the double up with that Italian side is a no-brainer in my opinion, especially if you guys are setting up for the group stages, because I think that Italy have quite a good group, and I think they should do quite well in it. So I mean, this double up in midfield, what we're going to kind of see is if Chiesa starts, otherwise we might have to sub him in rather. But as far as I know, I think Insigne is probably the most nailed option along with Immobile, and that's why I've gone for the captaincy on him for Game Week 1. But I think that Italian double up should be quite good, but I can always kind of rotate it. The nice thing about these two players' price bracket is that they're quite interchangeable, so I could maybe fit in another player here and maybe look at a Christian Eriksen, that sort of thing. But I think right now I am banking on Italy to beat Turkey, and that's why I'm quite comfortable with the double up in attack. Then go on to the next two midfielders, both I think 8 million. It's going to be Gini Van Aldum and then also Ferran Torres. So I've got Van Aldum here as a little bit of a double up with that kind of Dutch attack, because I think that Gini is just always involved in the Netherlands goals, gets an assist, gets a goal basically every game they play. If he does play at that cam slot, I'm expecting quite a good return from him, and that's the thing about Netherlands, is that I do think they'll win their pool as well. So I'm kind of targeting the Netherlands because they have good group fixtures, and I think that could lead to some more fantasy points. Then finally Torres from Spain. Now you guys must just be careful about the Spain versus Sweden fixture, because Sergio Busquets tested positive, so he's going to be out of that fixture, and obviously he came into contact with all these compatriots. So I mean, Torres could also maybe test positive, but just kind of keep your eyes on the news if that game is going to be going ahead, and if the game doesn't go ahead, what's actually going to be happening. I mean, we might have a double game week in a Euro Fantasy. Didn't really think that was going to come about in this competition, but I mean, that could be the case because of this whole situation with the pandemic. Going on to the back line, now I will tell you guys that my defense is quite shoddy. I've gone for some really budget options, and the main reason for that is that I think the value for money in the defense in these cheap options is actually going to be quite good. We first have Joachim Mæhle from Denmark. Apologies if I am butchering that name, probably the worst one in my lineup to pronounce, but I mentioned that value for money, and I think the Denmark defense, or the Danish defense, is going to be super good value for money. You have that other option at 4.5, the center back. I think it's Care that you guys can also look at, but I just think from a more attacking point of view, I've gone for their right back, left back. I always kind of forget where Mæhle does play, but I think he's definitely more attacking than the center back options, and that's why I've gone for him at 4.5. But just be careful that he could be a rotation risk, but I do think he's kind of 80% nailed in that Danish lineup. We got Spinazzola here from Italy as my kind of fullback from Italy. I mentioned that I think they should do quite well in the groups, and that's also going to be from a defensive point of view. And at 5.5, maybe a little bit more expensive than my other options, but I think that he could also offer maybe a little bit of an attacking threat, but I am kind of relying on those clean sheets. And the one thing that I can do, and the thing that I am considering, is either dropping a Ferran Torres or Van Aldum, and then Spinazzola to a Kjær from Denmark to kind of double up on that Danish defense, and then that'll also give me 1 million to upgrade one of my midfielders. Mention Van Aldum, Torres, and then I would bring in Christian Eriksen, because I think that Finland fixture for Denmark is going to be absolutely pristine. And yes, I will have a triple up on Denmark, so I'm going to be a Danish fan for the day, but I do still think that they should do quite well against Finland. Then the final kind of a defender I have is Vindel from Netherlands as well. So with Vindel, he might start, he might not, but at that fullback position at 4.5 against Ukraine, I think that that could be quite good if he actually starts, and then I can always just bring on a sub if he doesn't. Finally, in the goalkeeper position, I've got Bachmann from Austria. So at 4.5, he's a great value option to have, and he's kind of nailed down that Austria slot. And I think even the Austria manager or something like that came out and said that Bachmann is going to be their starting goalkeeper. So I would recommend going for him, because I think that Austria could be quite solid defensively, and when they face North Macedonia to start it off, I think that could be quite a profitable fixture from a defensive point of view. Going onto the bench, we've got Hideki at that 4.0 million mark. So I think all of you guys probably will have Hideki as your kind of backup goalkeeper. But against Denmark, I've mentioned that I think Denmark should do quite well against Finland. So I'm not really hoping for too much returns from his point of view. And I think that Bachmann will definitely come in from a goalkeeper position. And then going on to the rest of the bench, we've got Llorente from Spain. Now don't worry, this isn't Diego Llorente, the player from Spain that also tested positive apparently. So Llorente is a midfielder, and he has been playing at that fullback position or the wing-back position, and he's actually played quite well there for Spain. So I mean, he could be an option there that I could bring in. It's a little bit of a pity that he's not a defender in the Euro Fantasy game, but I think at 5.0, I mean, I didn't really want to go for Nego. A lot of people are going from Hungary at 4.0, but I just don't think that he starts, and I really do want a player that starts for their respective nation, because then that automatically makes them an option that I can bring on if they don't end up returning in my starting 11. Then finally, we've got Pau Torres, another Spanish player at that centre-back position, and the reason why is because he's 4.5. I mean, a 4.5 defender for Spain that has a chance of starting, I'm always going to be going for, because I think that could be quite a good value for money. And then the final player we've got is Ristovski from North Macedonia at 4.0 million. I kind of think that he will either be a centre back in a back three, or he'll be a left or right back. I think that Alioski is that right wing back, so I'm pretty sure he'll be on the left hand side, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong there, but apologies that I don't know the North Macedonian starting 11 right now. But at 4.0 million, not too much risk there. I'm just kind of bringing him in as a budget enabler, and he will start. So that's quite a nice option to have there on the bench. If he miraculously, North Macedonia do keep a clean sheet, he can always come on and give us some points. Now moving on to the second part of the team selection, as I mentioned, we now have to look at it from a fixture point of view and also a date point of view. So you can see that on the screen, I've sorted my starting 11 and my team selection to the date, which is something that I recommend that you guys do, so that you can kind of analyze your starting 11 and plan your rotation, plan your substitutes before the game week actually commences. So on the bench, I've got all my Spanish players and my Portuguese option with Ronaldo, because they play their games quite later on in the game week. And then I got all the other options that play before them on my starting 11, because please remember, you can't sub off and then sub on a player that's played already just because they maybe get more points than the player that you sub them off for. So just keep that in mind. So you can see there on screen that I've gone for my first captain, which is going to be Insigne for Italy, as they do play on Friday, the first match day of the game week. And then through my rotation, I'll then be going to Lukaku, then I'll be going to Memphis Depay probably, and then on the final day, I probably will go for Ronaldo. Between these four options, I'm expecting a return, and you guys just have to think in your mind, what quantifies not changing your captain? For me, it's probably going to be about a 10-point appearance. I think that should be quite a good amount of points to not change your captain, but it's going to be quite tough if Insigne gets a goal, and that's maybe about 7-8 points, and then I really do think Lukaku, Depay, or maybe even Ronaldo could outperform them. So just keep that in mind. Maybe before the game week starts, just sit down and think to yourself, what's going to quantify a good captaincy score and a score that won't make you change your captain to another option. So the final thing I wanted to talk about is going to be my chip strategy going into this Euro Fantasy season. And the reason for this is that we can kind of plan ahead, because we need to plan ahead because the game weeks are so condensed and the games are so close together that we really have to plan ahead for the future. So my current plan for the chip strategy is to use the limitless wildcard in match day 3 or game week 3. That's going to be the third fixture of the group stages, which is obviously the last match of the group stages. Just because I think with that limitless, there could be some rotation amongst the group stages and amongst the teams, so then we could go for some differentials there that to kind of pay off. And then before the round of 16, we do have a wild card, so we can kind of plan for the first 2 group stage fixtures, which I think will be quite respectable. And then we have the limitless in match day 3, and then we do have a wild card before the round of 16, and then I'll be using my other wild card before the quarterfinals. And the reason for this is just because that round of 16 to the quarterfinals, there could be a couple of upsets there, and at least that gives us enough time to kind of give our prediction. If you guys haven't watched my prediction, you can go watch that on the channel. I uploaded it about 2 days ago, so go check that out, and you can kind of see that once we hit that to round of 16, you guys are going to have to kind of predict which players you think are going to move on, because you don't have that many free transfers to take out dead wood. So just keep that in mind, and that's why I'll be using my second wild card before the quarterfinals, just to kind of give me a good shot from the quarterfinals to the finals, to get players that I think should perform the best and players that have the best fixtures, because we can't really plan ahead for the whole situation after the round of 16. But this is basically a wrap of the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe to this new channel if you have not yet. Also, as I mentioned, check out the videos that I have created, mainly the predictions video for the upcoming Euro 2020, and let me know down below who you think are going to be winning a Euro 2020, as well as your guys' final team selections going into that Friday night deadline where Turkey face Italy. I'm be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.